Hi folks, welcome to another training video. Today will be video one of a three-part series where we talk about programming and how to potentially build your own program, or at least proofread some programs if you bought one online or got one from a friend or what have you. So in video one, we're going to go over a microcycle. That's basically one training week, or however long it takes you to get through all your workouts before having to repeat them again. But for the sake of this conversation, we'll say it's 1 week. So we're going to talk about four main principles that I want you to look out for whenever you're designing a program or looking at a program. And then we'll go through a sample week just focusing on one muscle group or one exercise, which will be the bench press in this case. So let's get into it with these training principles. Principle number one I want you to watch out for when you're building a program is take the volume that you want to do for a muscle group per week. So let's say in this example, you're trying to do 15 to 16 sets of chest for week one. So it's way better to take those 15 or 16 sets and spread them over 2 or 3 sessions over the week, rather than cramp them all into one day, thinking that will destroy your chest and then you'll be good for the week. Now, unless you're a professional bodybuilder on a ton of gear, you've been training for 10 years plus, your chest will probably not be able to handle 15 to 16 hard sets in one session. What's going to end up happening is you're going to put in a good amount of effort for the first 6, 7, maybe 8 sets, and the rest of it you'll just be going through the motions. So why not take that same volume, spread it over a couple days, maybe 3 training days a week, and now you can hit them all with the same kind of intensity, same effort, same focus, and get much better results in the long run. So now that we've agreed we're going to spread the volume over 2 or 3 training days, we're going to take those priority muscle groups or priority movements and put them early on within the sessions. Why do we want to do that? For the same reason. We want to attack those priority muscle groups or movements when we're freshest. So in this case, if you were to put the bench press as your third exercise, and before that you would squat and you would do some bent over rows, by the time you get to the bench press, you're going to be fairly fatigued. And that's going to affect how much effort you can put into the bench press. And if it's a priority exercise, you want to move that up earlier in the session. So in this example, I've put in day 1 and day 3, we start with a bench variation. The second exercise will still be a chest exercise. And then only on day 4, it's going to be exercise number 4. The reason why I've put it in number 4 here is because even though chest is going to be the priority in this session, it doesn't mean that we need to fully neglect everything else and always start with chest. 2 days where we're starting with chest is good enough, and then on that third day you can put it somewhere more in the middle of the session. Now, another thing you could do is consider putting the priorities on days when you feel the freshest, on the best days of the week for you. So let's say, for example, on Thursday, you know you got a lighter workload, you can get in like 2 or 3 meals before your session, you go to the gym feeling strong, feeling energized. That's probably a day where you want to put the priorities in there. You don't want to, for example, squat on that day if squatting is not a priority for you right now. You can move the squats to another day, maybe when you feel less fresh, less energized, and keep those priority movements on your peak days. Now, that might not always be possible, but it is worth a shot if you know you have days in the week where you feel better, where you perform better, where you hit better numbers in the gym. And now, last but not least, is try to give muscle groups generally 48 to 72 hours in between sessions to recover. Now, that's not always going to be possible. So again, in this case, if you're doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you're going to have just about 24 hours between those last 2 days. However, that's another reason why in this case, we have our lighter chest day, where we just may be hitting 3 or 4 sets towards the middle or end of that session on day 4. So you can still do it with less than 48 hours of recovery. However, if possible, try to give those muscle groups 48 to 72 hours in between. So now that we spoke about those 4 principles, this is a sample week of what this could potentially look like. Again, for someone whose priorities is 1, to increase the bench press, and then 2, to grow the chest. If the priorities were to grow the legs and increase the squat, then you would change this around, obviously, for those goals. For these goals here, we're going to have day 1, we start with bench and then chest. Again, hopefully that's after a weekend of rest. You can feel fresh on those days. Then day 3, you repeat again with another bench variation and another chest exercise. And then day 4, you have just 1 chest exercise, maybe 3 to 4 sets max, where you're getting a little bit more volume throughout the week, but it's not going to be a really big day for the chest on that day. So volume-wise, let's say this is week 1 of this mesocycle, or this training block. And let's say you have 15 work sets of chest work for the entire week. So what that could look like is maybe 7 sets between these 2 on day 1. You have 6 sets between these 2 on day 3, and then 2 or 3 sets on our final day. And that will spread up the volume nicely over the course of 3 days over the week. And now all you have to do is repeat this process for the rest of the muscle groups. Now, between those 20 exercises over the course of the week, you'll be well-rounded in terms of being able to cover the entire body, all the muscle groups, all the main movement patterns. So make sure you get in some squats, some hip hinges, some rowing movements, some pressing movements, some shoulders, some arms. You can cover the entire body very easily with these 20 exercises, especially if you're prioritizing compound lifts. If you do too much isolation stuff, you might find that 20 is not enough, but again, that's probably a sign that you're doing a little bit too much of the isolation exercises. 20 exercises for the week, done with the proper intensity, with proper technique and effort, is way more than enough. Now, this is just for 1 week. In the coming video, you will see how we can progress this week over the course of 5 to 6 weeks, so one training block. And then in later videos, we'll also talk about how we can progress multiple training blocks within a training year. And that's when you start seeing real progress, which is over the long term. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.